All right, top 25 offensive free agents. The article right now, live on CBSSports.com. Go check it out. We'll run through offense first, then we'll go to defense. I'm going to make some predictions about where we want to see these guys end up. T. Higgins, Bengals wide receiver, comes in at number 1. Trey Smith, Chiefs guard, number 2. Number 3, Chris Godwin. 4, Ronnie Stanley, the Ravens OT. 5, Sam Darnold. 6, Stephon Diggs. 7, Drew Dahlman, the Falcons center. 8, Will Freeze, the Colts guard. 9, Cam Robinson, the Vikings/Jags OT. 10, Alaric Jackson, the Rams left tackle. Kevin Zeitler, the Lions guard, at 11. Amari Cooper at 12. Hollywood Brown, 13. Mekhi Becton, 14. Nuke Hopkins, 15. Josh Myers, Packers center, 16. Tevin Jenkins, the Bears guard, at 17. 18, Zach Martin, Cowboys guard. Oh, that's just sad to see.
Dude, that's
19,
crazy.
Najee Harris, running back for the Steelers. 20, Aaron Jones. 21, Dan Moore, Steelers left tackle. 22, Steelers guard, James Daniels. 23, Keenan Allen. 24, Brandon Scherf, Jags guard. And then 25 is a tie, actually, between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So let's go through the top 10 and just name some landing spots. T. Higgins, he's only 26 years old. His contract projection via PFF is 4 years at $28 million a year. I just don't see how he leaves the Bengals, how the Bengals let him leave.
Can't let him leave.
Can't let him.
The door is open as long as Joe's got his guys.
Exactly.
And then when those guys are gone, they're just going to have to pick a different door. So right now, just keep the door open because you don't know where the next one is or when it's going to come about. Obviously, we love Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and their synergy is amazing. They're always on the same page. But there's a reason that they get some of these advantageous looks, because when the numbers don't dictate to Joe Burrow to throw the ball to Jamar Chase, he's going to T. Higgins, and T. Higgins is going to make a play. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, their identity right now is we are going to score points. And I would hate to look at that offense if it was anemic without T. Higgins, because it would be depressing. Like you said, you can't let him leave.
Jermaine Burton not inspiring much confidence in me after his Hard Rock trips.
Casino.
On Saturday nights.
Shout out to the Hard Rock. Shout out to the state of Florida.
It's a really sweet Cincinnati's got a nice setup. Probably about 1 mile from the stadium downtown is the Hard Rock. It's right in between downtown Cincinnati and OTR.
Yeah.
2 big areas. Just a real nice, you just casually can pop in.
It's like the Midwest Vegas. That's what they say.
I struggled to go to that far, but it's sweet. It's a good setup.
It's the Bible Belt Bellagio.
It got Jermaine Burton though, because he was there too frequently.
Get you, dude.
They got some other free agents though. I mean, BJ Hill hitting free agency, Mike Hill hitting free agency, Mike Gesicki hitting free agency. That they're probably going to want to sign. $53 million cap space. I think they get it done. If he does hit the open market, that 4 years 28 is going to like 4 years 35 million a year.
Yeah.
Someone like the Patriots, someone like the Panthers, one of these desperate teams will probably fork over some cash his way.
Right, young T. Higgins, that would be a lot of fun. Drake May T. Higgins, anybody T. Higgins, but just find somebody who can get him the football.
Guy can play, but guy is well deserved of that number 1 ranking. Number 2, Trey Smith. 4 years, $20.5 million is the projection. That's because he's only 25 years old. Very much feels like Robert Hunt, though, a year ago, where it's like he's not the best guard. He's not a top 4 guard in the NFL, but he's comfortably in that tier behind that. If you still need a guard, you're like, yes, please. Like you're still paying top dollar to get
Trey Smith solves a lot of issues through his physicality. He's not going to be the highest graded player every week because that's just not the style of fighter that he is. He is like Brock Lesnar when he first got into the UFC. He's going to sprint across the octagon. He's going to try to tackle you, and he's going to hammer fist you into submission. Is it going to be clean? No. Is it going to be sloppy at times and really poor technically? 100%. Is he probably going to end up being banged up a little bit because of the nature of play that he does? And I'm not talking about injury. I'm talking about dings. I'm talking about, fingers and shoulders and stuff like that. Probably, but that's every single offensive lineman. But Trey Smith plays with an elevated physicality. So if you're a group that struggles to run the football, if you're a group that doesn't have that tone setter up front, invest in a guy like Trey Smith, because not only is he going to be the tip of the spear for your offensive line and a real leader in the room, but every single guy in that room will be challenged to pick up their level of intensity and physicality. So I love Trey Smith, really smart player, and somebody who has had a fantastic group around him and an O-line coach for the last 4 years now. And he had a great vet his rookie year. He had probably the best veteran ever, the most handsome one.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
At least. But yeah, Trey Smith, I could see him, on a team like you have written Detroit Lions in here. And I'm thinking Chicago Bears or Detroit Lions, because Detroit's going to be without one of their guys as well. And we're going to get to him on this list.
Yeah. Detroit Lions was like a selfish call. It would just be sweet to see put him next to Penei Sewell, and it's like that terrifying. And they got the space to do it. I mean, they got
actually
$51 million.
Terrifying.
They drafted so well of late that like they can play. They can make some moves if they really wanted to this offseason. I think more realistically, a lot of these top guys are the Patriots if they want them. They have so much more cap space than anyone else in the NFL. $28 million, which is $46 million more than the third most cap space, the Washington Commanders. $46 million is like going out and signing 2 star players, 2 Trey Smiths. So they have that much more cap space than a team with a ton of cap space. So they're going to go out and they're going to quite literally have to be big players in this just to hit the spending floors. So I think most realistically, Patriots should be the front runners. He obviously fits what they want to do with Mike Vrabel. So it should be, but selfishly, if he goes to Detroit, that would be a ton of fun to watch. All right, let's go to Chris Godwin, number 3 on this list.
I love this guy.
I do too. He is 29 years old. He is coming off that gruesome ankle injury. So obviously this will take a physical to probably get. The projection for him is 3 years at $20 million per year. I don't think he's back with the Bucs. 1, because the Bucs have kind of been tight up against the cap. 2, because Jalen McMillan's sort of emerges at the end of the year and makes him expendable. But I still think he'll be in demand. My call here is the New York Giants. I think they want a little bit more reliability across from a guy like Malik Neighbors. Darius Slayton, awesome, hitting free agency. I think he'll be in demand as well, but guy has very, very inconsistent hands. And if you're going out and you're trying to save your job, you want a vet wide receiver and you want a quarterback, right? And that if you get those 2 guys in tow, you should be able to have a competent offense and then ergo save your job. So I think the Giants is the one where I'm kind of have my eye on with him. I don't know about yourself. Who do you think?
I love that you put Giants there, and I hadn't thought about the Giants. But when you think about the things that Malik Neighbors can do from a vertical standpoint and just taking the top off the defense in conjunction with a guy like Chris Godwin's skill set, which is the underneath balls, the short of the sticks routes, and then be able to get that yak. He's an explosive guy with the ball in his hands. There's only a handful of teams I think are great on third down. And I feel like every single one of those teams has a guy like Chris Godwin who can turn a 3-yard play into a 15-yard play. And you said reliability with the hands. Chris Godwin's got that in bunches. So for the Giants, that would be really great. I was thinking about another team that's going to be using 2 tight end sets, maybe some short routes, the Raiders, but they probably wouldn't be able to afford him.
I like that call.
If you've got
the second most cap space,
if you've got a young quarterback, if you've got tight ends that are going to be within your field of view, why not just add another option there, like a Chris Godwin? You could end up looking like that Jared Goff offense, where it's 1, 2, 3 step throw, and somebody's open and somebody's going to get you chunks.
I like that call a lot, actually, with the Raiders. All right, let's go to Stanley at number 4, off sack with the Ravens. The projection from PFF is 2 years at $20 million a year. Obviously a shorter deal because he's 31 years old, or will be 31 years old by the time next season starts. And prior to last year, he had 4 straight seasons where he barely played with injury. So injury history going to be a factor here. Penalties going to be a factor. He had 15 last year. And obviously blocking for Lamar Jackson a little bit
4
easier.
of them were week 1, night 1. It was that bullshit rule where they were trying to get our offensive tackles to move up. It's hard enough. Let us get some leeway, okay? You tried to make an example of my guy, Ronnie Stanley, who's a brilliant player. We've talked about it a number of times. Harry Heastand disciple automatically just fit him for the gold jacket because he played at Notre Dame, right? But in all seriousness, I do have some concerns about the injury stuff. And if that weren't one of the flags indicated on his file, I would be pounding the table to get him to go to a place like Chicago, because they're going to need that
Mm-hmm.
protector on the left side of Caleb Williams. They're going to be learning this new offense, as we've seen time and time 67 times again. Is Caleb Williams going to hold on to that football? And sometimes when you hold on to the football and you don't have the right Johnnies and Joes, that's when you get flattened. So I would think Chicago, if the injury thing didn't stand out to me, 31 doesn't bother me, but the injuries bother me.
I think the Patriots and the Bears are your two teams that will be knocking at his door, being like, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think he signs back with the Ravens. I think they know the value of a left tackle.
He's been there forever with Lamar.
Dumb franchise. They aren't going to leave themselves just holding their you-know-what at the left tackle position. When you have Lamar Jackson, you have this window. They will figure out a way to keep that guy a Baltimore Raven. All right, number 5, Sam Darnold. We discussed him already off the top. PFF projection with him, those 3 years, $41.25 million per. I think that could happen. If it does, it would be a lot of funny money on the back end that he may never see. But I think it's going to end up more realistically, like the first 2 years of his deal are going to be something like $15 million cap hit, $30 million cap hit, and then like a $50 million we'll see at the very back end that he may never get to. Stephon Diggs, number 6. This one is probably the one I disagreed with most, having watched him last year, coming off an ACL at 31 years old. A 1 year, $16 million projection I don't see. I don't think he's going to be that in demand. The team
He's dating Cardi B. He's with Cardi B out in the streets.
Ooh, I'm not up to date on pop culture the way.
Well, this indicates to me that you're not going to get a return on your value. Okay, I saw what she did to what's his name, Offset.
Dude, yeah. And I tend to think so. I don't think he's worth $16 million on a 1 year deal right now, especially coming off an ACL. The team that I highlighted, Pittsburgh Steelers, as a potential, obviously with what they've been able to do, reining in vocal wide receivers, shall we say. So one of the few places that I think would take them. I just don't think a lot of places you're like beating down the door for a 31-year-old guy who's been ran out of town at 2 different stops already. So maybe Texans obviously always could resign there depending on how they felt about him year 1.
And he's not a green flag culture fit. You know, some people have green flags and they're like, we'll sign him regardless. You know, like he gets along well with the guys in the room. He does well with. It's a question mark for me on Stephon Diggs. And it got me thinking about where would be able to handle his personality and all the things that come along with Stephon Diggs well. And I could see him with that Raven on his helmet. I could see him in Baltimore. Just being another guy that they can throw at you because, you know, they're just a rolling butcher block of knives or whatever.
All right, next up, Drew Dahlman, center for the Atlanta Falcons. You've discussed him a lot. He's only 26, first time hitting free agency. Projection for him, he's a great run blocker, not as great in pass pro. 4 years, $11.5 million. And
good for him.
Chicago Bears. I like Chicago Bears too.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the center position, and particularly when you have a young quarterback, when you break the huddle and you go to the line of scrimmage, instead of having one set of very young eyes looking at the defense, it's nice to have that insurance policy of a guy who has seen a lot of things. Obviously, he's not a really salty vet yet, but he's a veteran at this point in his career. He will be able to help Caleb Williams pre-snap, which will in turn be able to speed or slow things down for Caleb Williams post-snap. I just think it's really important to solidify the inside of that offensive line, which is, you know, you've named 3 linemen so far, and I pitched them all to the Bears. It's funny, but that's a reality situation when you've got the round 1, pick 1 quarterback who's coming into his second year, who's sacked nearly 70 times. You need to do whatever on God's green earth it takes to get your offensive line shored up.
All right, next one, Will Freeze, guard for the Colts. 4 years, $14.3 million per is the projection. He's only 27 years old. I highlighted the Jags. I highlighted the Jags with him because Brand Scherf obviously may retire. He's a free agent. They got that massive need at right guard. I think it makes a lot of sense with, you know, robbing some other team from your division. So that's the team I would look at with him. But with not a lot of offensive line talent for agency, I think all these guys will be in demand. Next one, Cam Robinson, Vikings left tackle. 3 years at 18.7 per is the projection, which, yikes. I mean, he's He's about the left tackle that you probably don't need to replace, but you always want to do better when he's in there. I think that's like the level you would call him at. Where you're like, you're upset about him, you're unhappy about it. You probably could still have an.
Who else? If not him, then who?
Yeah, exactly. So
I played with a few guys like that. I'll never name them, but that's a real feeling sometimes where it's like there is no reinforcement coming. Like, this is our guy. We got to just roll with it.
He has to be,
and he's worth $18.7 million per year.
Because there's probably, unfortunately, in the NFL right now, 20 of those guys, maybe 20 guys better than him at left tackle. That gets you paid. And I think the Pats are the one where, if Ronnie Stanley goes back to the Ravens, what else can they do? Who else can you go get? There's not other guys that can for sure be available. Vikings aren't re-signing him. So, yeah, unfortunately, the Pats, they may be having to throw some serious cheddar at some average guys, shall we say. It's the hole you dig when you don't have talent on your roster and have that much cap space. Last one, Alaric Jackson, left tackle for the Rams. 4 years, $14.5 million is the projection because this is his first time hitting free agency, I believe, 27 years old. I just think he goes back to the Rams. Now, they're kind of strapped in terms of they're paying that offensive line the most in the NFL. They got a lot of big contracts, but may try to move off of some of them this offseason that aren't performing well, and definitely try to keep Alaric Jackson in the fold because he brought some real stability to that team down the stretch. All right, is there anyone outside of that top 10 that you really are like, I would want to sign this guy? I think he will be outplaying whatever contract he gets.
Well, the guy that's on the list, my one run it back is the Drew Dalman stuff because
I think he'll outplay the contract he gets.
I think he gets somewhere and he becomes the glue for a group. I really do. Mm-hmm. I've watched him since he was in college, and he's not the biggest guy or the strongest guy or the fastest guy, but he's a really bright center. I trust guys whose dads played more than guys whose dads didn't. He understands what it takes to be a center. His dad was an O lineman in the NFL for a while. Good player. I think that stuff is priceless, and not only what you produce on the field, but how you carry yourself in the meeting room, the leader that you can be for a room of young players like in Chicago, the opportunity to have a center that organizes O-line dinners on Monday nights and, gets the cooler of beer ready for after a victory in the parking lot. Like, that stuff's important. And I think that he's a guy that probably understands it better than most. And I think that whoever ends up signing Drew Dalman will be really happy.
My under the radar guy that I would like to throw a bone to, Jedrick Wills, the left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, former first rounder. I think there's a good chance he's this year's Mekhi Becton. And now maybe not as good as Becton was, but a guy who won't get signed for much because he had, problems in terms of the locker room there in Cleveland, problems with injury. He started off his career like a house on fire and then got worse. And that's always like a red flag. And that's very much like Mekhi Becton. But a change of scenery, maybe a change of position to guard. So he very easily could play that as well. And I think this guy could have a resurgence, kind of get his head on straight, realize that, hey, you were, top rated recruit, Alabama, go to be a first round pick to getting paid, that all of a sudden the market's not going to be there. You thought you were this $100 million guy, and at times throughout his career, he looked like he was going to be.
Yes.
You might not be getting more than $5 million a year.
That's a shame. And it's indicative of how tough this league is.
It is. And so I think on a 1 year prove it deal, I would love someone like Jedrick Wills, kind of like what Mekhi Becton did last year, to try to stay healthy, recapture that magic, get, his mental correct.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, he feels like that's where it feels like.
Are you kidding me?
One of those
Andy Heck would be like, I've seen the film. I've seen what you can do. Why don't you do that all the time? Well, we're going to do it all the time now. And you're going to do it with your new buddy, All-Pro Joe Tooney, right next to you. And you're going to be blocking for Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. You ever heard of him? A little different than your guy over there in Cleveland, huh?
You're not running into sacks, I'll tell you that.
Come on. Hey, you're telling me if Andy Reid picks up the red phone and calls Jedrick Wills and he's like, hey, man, you want to come block for Patrick, man? That Wills isn't like, I'll take 4 to go block for him for
Yeah.
1 year, like an opportunity to go get to that 20 a year mark.
Throw in a
If he
bundle
can-
Ruski.
If he can play the whole season, play like the guy that he is, he'll get paid.